Okay. Hello, everyone. Um, Welcome back. This is going to be our first video for the Steam Services structures, AE-222, the structures portion. This is going to be about kind of just a crash course on the skills that you'll need for part A. So as you probably saw in the description that I hope you all read, Part A just covers the foundation of the basement. So that is going to be kind of the, so you're going to go to sheet S100, the foundation plans, and it has the lower level and the basement on one sheet. And you're just going to focus on foundation plan 2 right here, which is just for the basement. Um, so all we're going to be modeling is this basement portion for now. Um, so just focus on, let's see, kind of this whole portion. So for right now, um, this is all that you have to model on this sheet. What you need to model is the foundation walls, the strip footings, and the spread footings, and also the piers, I believe. But double check, as always, with your rubric. And of course, you need the correct modeling area, so you need all your grid lines as well. Okay, so now that you guys know what you're going to, you have to model, I'm just going to go over just a quick few tips on how to read the drawings. Structural drawings are a little interesting, so I'm just going to give you a couple of tips on how to read them before we begin in modeling them. So first of all, when you look at this, it's very similar to architectural drawings. You have your walls that are just kind of stand out. Um, and the walls themselves, you will have to go and refer back to the rest of the drawings. Where did it go? Why would it do this one? You're going to have to go to the drawings to determine which walls that they are. You can either use architectural drawings, or I believe down here, and you can check with the notes and everything. I'm sure you guys have already done this, but you do need to confirm that you're using the correct walls. And so the walls, you guys know that, you know what they look like. The things that are going to be new to you is just about everything else. So if you see these dashed lines, right? These represent the spread. So this is a spread footing, the squares kind of that are underneath all the columns called spread footings, and the strip footings are underneath the walls. Okay. So these dashed lines represent all of the footings. And you can see that all of the footings are labeled with what they are. So for example, this highlighted one right now, its label is F6, right? And it also tells you the top of footing elevation. Again, you guys should know this by now after doing the reading structural drawings activity. So this label of F6 is going to match with down here the footing schedule. So you can see F6, it tells you the reinforcement, but we don't really need that. We really care about um the obviously the mark, the oh my goodness, the title. And then but the size is really what we care about. So this tells you that it's 6 feet by 6 feet by 1 foot depth, right? So that is going to be extremely important. So those are going to be for your spread footing. So all of your spread footings are going to be labeled, going to have an F and then a number, right? And then all of your strip footings are going to be labeled with a W, which W kind of reminds me of wall, right? So it's a little bit more helpful. So these are going to be your spread footing types. And what these tell you is the width and then also the depth, right? Because the length, um, it goes for the length of the wall or for however long it is noted for. So that is another thing that I want to tell you guys to kind of learn how to read. So if we follow down this line here, right, it says W4, and it tells you the top of footing. And then it kind of runs into some spread footings, and then it continues. But if you can see here, it doesn't tell you what it is. So that is just your hint that until it tells you um, a new type of spread footing, you're just going to continue with it until it tells you something else, right? So you're going to be using this W4 all the way for this line here, for this wall here. Actually, let me just highlight the wall instead. That might be easier. Like that. So for this W4 right here, you're going to be using it along this wall. This is spread footing. You're going to be using it along this wall, all the way to this wall as well. And it's just going to keep going until it tells you something else. Now here it says W4 again. So you're just going to keep going with the W4 until it tells you something else. As always, now it says a W6. So from you can also see that the width is going to change. So that's another hint that you have to switch your strip footing. So here's a W6, right? W6. And you can see how it has that wider width. And W6 does have a wider width. So it's going to go all the way along this wall. Actually, it's going to go all the way to the corner so that you can get the width out here. So that's another thing that I'll show you guys is how to cut walls so that you can kind of get these corners with the correct widths. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's another thing to look out for. And then it goes the same for the top of footing elevation. So until it tells you a different top of footing, you're going to go with the same one, right? So this 14.8 is going to continue along this green wall, and it's going to continue along the pink wall as well because it's also 14.8 here. But you see that there's footing steps where the top of elevation or top of footing changes and it drops down to 17, right? So make sure that you pay attention to the elevation changes. And again, similar to when you're switching footing types, I'll also show you that we'll use a cutting wall trick to make sure that you can get the different elevations. That's mainly about reading. All of the piers are going to appear kind of as that kind of like corner, so very similar to the architectural drawings, right? So they're gonna bump out a little bit, so that's how you know there's a pier there, and a pier here, and here, and so on and so on. As you can see, I'll just give you the tip now. In the notes, it tells you that all the piers shown in this specific foundation plan are P1. So that means that you will be using this dimensions. So it's going to be 1/6 by 1/6. And I'll show you guys how to make a pier in Revit as well. So the piers are going to go all the way down to the footer that they're on. And just a tip, I believe they go to, I think, 6 inches below the slab on grade. Somewhere it says that. You'll have to confirm it. Do, do, do. It also tells you here, provide column piers at all external wall columns. So it's telling you exactly what these piers are going to be like. Oh, tells you right here. Within top 5 inches. Top of pier is 8 inches from the floor. So when you go into doing your slabs on grade, and your columns and such, this is going to be a very important tip. So kind of just remember this for later. For right now, I don't think it's too much of a difference because I don't think you guys are putting in the slab on grade. I cannot remember. Here, let me see. Let's go check. Let's see. You're putting in the footers, foundation walls. Oh, okay. You are doing the slabs on grade. All right, perfect. So when you do your slabs on grade, you'll be able to make sure your piers go to 8 inches below that slab on grade. So I guess we will go over how to read the slabs on grade. That's going to be your finished floor elevation. So let me get another color. We've already done that color. Purple. Your finished floor elevation. So that is, again, you should know this from your structural drawing activity. So the finished floor elevation is going to tell you the slab on grade elevation. And it, again, only changes when you see a different dimension for it. So in this case, for almost the entire basement, it's going to be at negative 14. But the elevator pit goes down a little bit deeper. It's going to be at negative 19. So just another tip of how to read things. Okay. Now that I'm looking at it, you just have Perfect. All right. So let's get started on modeling. So to start this, you're just going to go ahead and you're going to create a new Revit model. If you want to use the old, what's it called, grid lines from the architectural model, you can just copy and paste them over. But I just suggest making whole new ones because we are modeling the full building for this case. We're not just doing the partial model like we did for the architectural. So I just suggest remaking them. They're pretty fast. You guys have done it before. So yeah. All right. So we're just going to go and we're going to keep the template file as the Imperial Multidiscipline. We're going to create a new project. You're going to click OK. And it's going to load. Take its sweet time. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just put in some temporary grid lines, just so that we can use them for the example. As you can see, these are not the grid lines how you will have them in. These are not like the STEAM services grid lines. These are just for our example. And there we go. And to be honest, I'll just keep them how they are because it's not really important for now. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to an elevation and oops, that's those sheets. I'm just going to go to an elevation and I'm going to put my levels in. So right now we're at levels 1, 2, etc., etc. I'm going to extend these up so I can see all of them. And I'm going to put in some more levels. Oops, grid line. Level. And as I mentioned before, you guys are going to put in the actual STEAM services levels. I am just putting in temporary ones for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name my levels and I'm going to make this the basement, and it's at negative 14. And I suggest going with the, so fix this. There we go. So I can stretch that down. All right, so let me go ahead and go back to the drawings. I suggest going with the where are my elevations? Oh, I already passed them. All right. Going with the going through the elevations and using the oh my goodness, the level floors that they have. So, oops, I almost unincluded the basement. So you're going to use a basement, a lower floor, first floor, all the way up to the high roof. So I'm just going to copy those over real quick. So I'm just going to do the basement and the lower floor and the first floor. The other ones we don't really need for right now. Okay. So I'm just going to do those so that we have those made already. So that means you guys will already be at kind of this stage. And I would just do all of your grid lines now and worry about just modeling the basement, but I would have all your grid lines done right now at this point. All your grid lines and levels done and dimensioned properly and locked in place so they can't move. And now we can get started of actually modeling the foundation. So I'm going to go and I'm going to open up not my architectural floor plan, but my structural floor plan. So if you go to structural, and right here it goes structural plans. Right now we have an L1 and an L2. So the L1 is, I believe, considered our basement. Not sure why they didn't rename everything. Of course. Of course it didn't. Here, let's go to my architectural. Oh, that's right. I have to rename these. Let's call this lower floor. Let's call this first floor. There we go. So my L1 should be my basement. And let's just put some, oh, by another tip, if all your grid lines are not showing up, what you can do, sorry, I'm just gonna hide these, get them out of the way. If your grid lines aren't showing up, it means that they're not in the entire view of your elevations. So just open up all of your elevations and make sure that your scope box, and you're going to have to adjust this feature sometime. So go to scope box and go to none, and then you can adjust your, what's it called? You can adjust your crop view and your scope box, but really what's important is that your grid lines aren't stretching all the way down for all of your levels, down or up. So in this case, it was both down and up. So let me put it up there and down. So now it's going, stretching from the basement all the way up to my L3 that I have it. And I'm going to double check the south. So in the south, it's good. And in the west, it is good. Okay, so I can close these. So now when I go back to my L1, all my grid lines show up. Perfect. All right. So we want to do these foundational walls first, so I can show you the spread footings. I'm going to put some piers down. Again, these are also piers right here. Don't worry about the columns just yet. You guys don't have to do the columns. Area plan. Yeah, you do not have to do the columns yet. So don't worry about the specific columns. Just worry about the piers. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do the walls. So I'm going to go to wall, structural, and I'm just going to use the generic walls for now. I'm just going to make mine a square, really. Yeah, sure. All the way. Bam, a square. And I'm going to use a thinner wall for the interiors. Sure, just go all the way across. This will be our makeshift elevator pit. And let's see. I'm going to do an example like this. And an example like. Okay. Really crazy foundation I got going on. It's huge, but it's okay. It's just to show you guys the process. Obviously, all your walls are going to be the correct thickness. They're going to be in the right grid lines. They're going to be the right type of wall. But this is just the process. So the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is to create the piers. So what you're going to do is go to column, structural column. And what the piers are, they're just a concrete square, really, in this specific case, especially the P1. So I'm just going to click kind of really any one of these. I'm just going to do the 20 by 20. So that's in inches. I'm going to go edit type. And here's the thing. And again, I'm going to go duplicate. I'm going to name it P1. Click OK. And I'm just going to edit this. It's 16 by 16. So I should have clicked the 18 by 18. Here we go. And you click OK. And now you have your piers. And now you can put your piers wherever they need to be. So we have some in the corners. We have plenty along certain grid lines, right? Where the columns are going to be. So I'll just put them like there for now. And in the corners, um, you can be a little bit approximate about the ones in the corners, right? Because they kind of run into the walls and stuff. Um, so usually what I do is I just move it until the corners line up with each other. So you can use the align tool, just line up the corners, and that's usually good enough. Um, we just want them in the general area. You're open to a little bit of approximation there. Okay, so that's how you make piers. That's how you put piers down. As always, you can adjust their offsets, etc., so that they go the correct length. So those are your piers and your foundation walls. So the next thing, which is the hardest part, which is the strip footings and the spread footings. So what I'm going to do is I might make, yeah, I'm going to draw another wall right here. Oops. See, oh, that's a great example. So I just drew a generic architectural wall, and because I am in a structural plan, I cannot see that architectural wall. But if I go to architectural, there it is right there. I don't want that. I want to draw everything in structural. So make sure that you use the structural wall um, in the drop down so that you can see everything on your plan. If you guys accidentally don't use a structural plan and just use an architectural plan, and you try to put down your footings, because your footings are structural components, you are not going to be able to see them in an architectural plan, and you're going to get really confused. So that's why from the very beginning, I suggest making a whole new project, putting down whole new grid lines, and starting with your structural plans. Okay. And if you like are confused, like why are my levels not showing up? Remember, if you go to view and you go to plan and you go structural plan, you can see it has all the other floors. I only named up to those two. So you can go okay. And there they are. Where's my structural? Structural. Here we go. And we know that the L1 is the basement and the L2 is the lower floor. Just make sure that you rename that so you stay on track with everything. Okay, so moving on to the spread footings and the strip footings. So as I mentioned before, the spread footings are for the columns and the strip footings are for the walls. So let's start with the spread footings, as those ones are a little bit easier. So to make them, you're going to go to structure and you are going to go to isolated. So isolated, it kind of shows you it is the footing for a column, right? This is going to be your your spread footing. So if you click isolated, it's just going to give you a random one that they already have. What we're going to do, and what I suggest doing before you even start placing them down, is making all of your different footings. So if we go back and we just click on this one and we go edit type, you're able to go duplicate. And let's say we want to make F6, for example. You can name it F6, click OK, and you can put in the thickness, the width, and the length. So if we go back to our drawings, it said right here, F6 is 6 by 6 by 1. So you're able to go, the thickness is 1, and the width is 6, and R has the length of 6. And you can press OK. So, like I mentioned before you go in and start putting them in, I suggest just making all of them so that you're able to just boom, pop them in whenever. All right. So let's say you already have all of them made, and I want to put down this F6 one because that's what I made. And we're just going to pretend I'm putting it in the right location. And so what's important is not only the location, but also the top of footing elevation. So in this case, it's at 14.8, right? Negative 14.8. So when I place it, let's say that's the correct spot. I'm going to click OK. And now, so the level is the basement, which is good, but the height offset from the level is 9 feet. We don't want that because if we go to 3D view, it's going to look super, not too crazy, but a little crazy. And the reason why it looks crazy is all my piers are actually in the wrong location as well. So if we adjust this to be, so remember it's at negative 14.8 is the top of footing elevation, but the level that my footing is constrained to is the basement, right? and the basement is at -14. So really, the height offset from the level, I really only want it to be -8 inches. So that's going to bring it up. Oh, you actually have to adjust the pier first, because the footing is attached to the bottom of the pier. So that was a great example of how you can make that mistake. There we go. So obviously our footing is going to go up until, or sorry, no, our pier is going to go up until, let's see, let's find a good pier, 8 inches from the finished floor, right? So this pier actually just stays pretty small. But some piers might go a little higher. So, but we probably won't experience that until a little later. Okay, actually, all of my walls are 20 feet, -20 feet. So they look a little weird. Let me fix that so we don't really confuse ourselves. Do, do, do. Let's make it up to the first floor for now, just so we don't get confused. Press enter and apply. Now, another important thing that you'll see when we do the spread footings is that sometimes your walls are going to attach to your footings, right? Kind of very similar to how this footing attached to this pier. But we'll get into that when we get there. Okay, so this pier, it's going to go until 8 inches below the finished floor. But it actually starts on the basement elevator. Like this is where it gets a little confusing. In these structural drawings. So these piers, they they go all the way down to the footing. But it's going to go 8 inches below, not the basement floor, but the first floor. And it feels a little weird, but basically it's going to go to 8 inches from where the column starts. And you kind of don't really want your column to start like floating, right? So really it gets a little confusing, but you guys will be able to grasp it later on. So I'm going to put all of these piers to go 8 inches below the first floor in the case of the basement. So so you can kind of see like how the piers work, right? Sorry. Actually, let me double check that because I want to make sure that I tell it to you guys properly. All right, sorry guys. I am back. I just kind of wanted to pull up my old Revit project just to show you guys what I was talking about. I just wanted to clarify about the piers. So this is like another thing that you guys are going to have to get used to. Um, so when reading these structural drawings, if you see the pier, like kind of the outline, right, in the drawing, that means that it is going to kind of like how you can see the walls, right? That means it's going to go start at the base of the footing and it's going to stretch all the way up to 8 inches below the floor above this foundation plan. So it's going to kind of just going to hint it at you guys, but the floor above this is the first floor, so 0, right? So this pier is going to stretch from wherever the top of footing is, so 17, all the way up to 8 inches below 0, or sorry, -17. So that's if you can see kind of the pier, right? If you can see it, that means it's going up through the slab on grade, right? And it's going to be 8 inches below the finished floor above. However, for columns that do not have that you cannot see them, like for these columns, right? You cannot see their piers. It doesn't mean the piers aren't there because they are. They're just going to be from where the footing is to 8 inches below the finished floor elevation. So I can show you a quick example of that. So this is the examples of the this is, by the way, what your project is going to eventually look like. So this is an example of the piers that stretch all the way up, right? So, and like kind of how you can see here, it's okay if it goes inside the wall, that's totally fine. But for these columns that didn't have the pier, um, see if I can highlight it. So yeah, there's its footing, and the pier is actually, you can't even really see it. The pier is kind of like non-existent because, let's see if I can. Well, here's a good example. That's actually supposed to be -8 inches. So it is wrong. Oh yeah, they actually end up being 0 at some of these. Um, so like this one, the pier is like non-existent because 8 inches below is exactly where the elevation is, and you have to take into account the thickness of this slab on grade. So some of these, the pier is non-existent. Um, its pier is really the basement slab on grade. But for others, it could be different, you know. So I would just double check it. Like this F9, you can see the top of footing, or yeah, the top of footing is -14.8, and that is going to be implied for everything kind of touching this footings here. So it's going, this -14.8 is going to continue until you hit a footing step. So yeah, actually it kind of looks like the ones that don't have footings at all might not even have a pier. Or sorry, that don't have piers might not have a pier. But I would double check that. Don't just take my word for it. Double check it, see if it makes sense. Okay, so we're going to continue. I just wanted to show you kind of how it would look like what I was trying to explain. If I didn't hide the slab on grade, you'd see that it was going to be 8 inches below it, or 8 inches beneath the finished floor level. Anyway, we won't focus on that for too much. We're going to go back. And so that's kind of how you make footings, and you put footings down. Um, like I said, make all of your footings first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of show you an example like this where they kind of just all run into each other. Um, yeah. So I'm going to make a new footing. Actually, no, it's fine. I'm just going to use this one. Here, it's not at this correct spot because this pier is not at the correct spot. I'm just going to put it -8 inches down. Apply. Click OK. All right, cool. So now I'm going to show you how to do your spread footings. So these are going to be your, actually, cancel. -0.8. And I'm going to put this up to the first floor and put all of these walls. Okay, good. So I'm going to show you how to do your spread footings now. So these are going to be, again, under structure, and it's going to be wall. And if you click wall, as always, it just gives me a basic wall foundation, and you guys are going to make your own. So I would go to edit type, again, duplicate, maybe make a W4, right? Go back to your drawings. It says the W4 is 4 by 1/6. So again, that's your width by your depth. So your width is 4, your depth is 1/6. And perfect. And click OK. And then you just go ahead, and I made it, and you just click on your wall. So I'm going to say this wall, this entire wall is going to be W4. So boom, click on it and it just appears. Maybe this wall is also W4. Boom, it automatically connects. Now, where it gets tricky is when other things run into it. So you have footings that run into it and other walls that come out and other thicknesses that happen, like this example here, right? So let's say if a footing runs into it, let me make a new footing, edit type, duplicate it, and I'm just going to make the F8 or whatever it is. I'm just going to make it an 8 by 8. Again, this is just for example purposes. So now I made that and it's right there and they run into each other. When you put them at the correct elevation, they will just seamlessly mold together and it kind of won't even look like that there's any type of problem. So right now they already are at the same elevation, they're molding together. Um, let's say we wanted to do it accurately to the drawings. Both of them are at negative 14.8, negative 14.8. So I'm going to put them all at that negative 8 inches from the basement level. And, oh, that's correct. So for your wall footings, this obviously would have a pier on it that will be controlling its depth. So you really want to put in your piers and your walls first. I messed that up. So gotta make sure this pier is at the correct depth. There we go. So now everything's right. And so your wall is going to control your spread footing. So I want this wall to be at negative 14.8. So I got to put it at negative 14.8 myself. And that's going to make sure that everything's at the correct elevation. So everything's at the same elevation. They all seamlessly blend. I wouldn't worry about it right now if it doesn't blend nicely, kind of like how it does before. That's okay. This is okay to have. We know that they're at the same depths. Um, but now let's say, and we're going to put this one at the same depth as well. There we go. So, yep, everything blends nicely. So now let's say we're going to have that change of depth, right? Or maybe we can even have a different footing elevation. So kind of like how we have these footing steps here or footing steps here. The way that you can add in these footing steps is actually just by, because if you remember, your wall controls your footer. So if you go to modify and split, I usually like to do split with gap. You can cut your wall at whatever actually, no, don't do split with gap. You can cut your wall at wherever there is a footing elevation change, right? So this time it drops down to, let's say, negative 17. So that means from here on out, let's say, this footer drops down to negative 17. So it's not just going to be 8 inches below, it's going to be now 3 feet below that 14. So if we go and look at it in 3D, you can see that we have that footing step. And again, your wall is connected with it, so your wall is going to move everything. If it's simpler for you guys, instead of like, subtracting from 14, you can, of course, put your walls, their base constraint, or sorry, their base constraint to be, what's it called? Oh my goodness, the first floor. And then do it from there. So like if I made my base constraint the first floor, I would need it to be negative. I could just use negative 17, which is right on the drawings, and it'll be at the same location, right? Didn't really change. So you can of course do that, but I would pick one, stay consistent with it. So it's a very similar thing for when you like, for example, we have two footings here and then we have a wall. Let's say we're going to have a wall footing. I'm just not gonna save. That just means this video is going on for a little too long. So let me use my wall footing real quick. And I don't want the wall footing to stretch through these guys. They could be at different elevations, I don't want it to do that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it, right? And let's say this kind of rectangle right here is at a different elevation. So I'm going to cut my wall before I put on the spread footing. I'm going to cut it where the different elevations happen. So let's say there's a step here. Just not sure if it cut. Sometimes it's really finicky. So let's say there's a step there and a step here, right? So I'm going to put this at a different elevation. So these were at -8 inches. Let's say for some reason it's deeper. So I'm going to put it at -1 foot, something like that. And then I can go ahead and put my spread footing on, whatever thickness you want it to be. And now, as you can see, let me go. They're at the different elevations. So that is what you guys are going to have to do a lot. Like be careful with your cutting, right? Just to make sure that you can get those different elevations in there. Another cool trick, so like you can see, um let me find a good example. Oh yeah, let me do the different widths for the walls. So let me go to this corner here. Let's make a new uh wall foundation. Let's edit this. Duplicate, let's call it W6, and the width is, let's just say it's 6 feet. And I don't know, let's see if I got it right. W6, 6 feet by 1/6, perfect. Okay, so keep that the same, click OK. So this is where it's going to get kind of crazy over here. So I'm going to put the W6 in for now. And you can see that it doesn't spread all the way down how I kind of want it to, right? There's a couple ways you can change it. You can do it manually, right? You can figure out just how to lock onto it. And then you can cut this wall so that you can only care about this. So if we wanted to do that, I can go ahead and cut this wall right here. And then this guy has its own independent little spread footing in there. It's gonna not let me select it. There, and you can just delete it. And that's just the pier, actually. I'm gonna fix that or wherever that belongs. And then you can see I have the footing step in there if there needs to be a footing step, if they're supposed to be at the same depth. This depth is at -17, so -3 feet below. Let's go to our drawings and see if I can do it. It has the same depth, right? -14. Ah, so this one has -14.5. There's no footing steps. So they actually have about 3 inches. Oh, sorry. No, they're the same, -14.8. So I'm going to make them the same. I know I put this one not correct, so I'm just going to put them to be the same. So I'm just going to keep it at that -3. So you can see that they're the same. And it's a nice seamless connection right here, right? And then you can put your pier to be on top of it, so it makes sense. And boom. So that's kind of how, that's like one way you can do the corner. That's usually the way I like to do it. Sometimes it doesn't let you do that. So sometimes you have to cut in different ways and see which footing it lets you to stretch. It allows you to stretch. Well, that's just one way I really like to do it. That's really nice. And then that's kind of really it. It's a lot of playing around with the cuttings to see what kind of combination works so that you can do it. As you can see, like these walls, it's just one wall footing for both of them. So um that is a little tricky of like which wall do I put it on. Uh again, it doesn't necessarily need to be perfect. Um but like if you do put it on like one of these walls just to make sure that it stretches to the other, right? So let's do that real quick. Um let's say it goes like, how does it go? Yeah, it just goes in a little circle. So we do it like that. Maybe move this in. They are not connected. For some reason. Are they at different? Oh, yep, they are at way different levels. So that makes sense. Put that to the first floor, put that to 0. Not sure why it's building all of my walls like this. That's kind of annoying. All right, let's squeeze it closer. So it has a W1 wall footing. I'm just going to use like a W4 for example. Um, but it kind of goes throughout the whole thing. So one thing that you can also do if sometimes the spread footings or the strip footings are not labeled, you can check their measurements on Bluebeam, right? Because it tells you how wide they're supposed to be. So let's say you're like, I can't tell if that's a W1 or a W2. You can just check it on Bluebeam. So this is at a 1/8 scale. Um, oh my goodness, I'm not used to Revit 21. Tools, markup, go, measure, the length. It probably doesn't have a scale set. It's gonna yell at me. Yep, there we go. So let's put in a 1/8. Apply. So this is at 2 feet, about 10 inches. So kind of like 3 feet. So it's a W2 here, but down here tells us it's a W1. So it's probably just referring to the W1 for this one wall right here, because it's that 2 feet, which is a W1. So that means for this, you can use a W2. So let's do that. So let's say for here, oops, I don't want a wall. I want a wall footing. Let's say it's a W6 and it's going to go down to a W4. So there's my W6 and kind of goes out a little bit. So you can measure how far out it goes and then just kind of like extend it, right? But we also want to put a W4 on one of these walls. So what you can do, go like this and W4, oops, and just put it on one of them. And it's really not wide enough. But what you can mess with, first of all, you can kind of spread it back. See, this one's not letting you stretch it, right? So I'm going to have to cut the wall at where this W6 comes in. So if I cut both of the walls right along this line and this line, and then I put the spread footing on one of them. But again, I can stretch it out a little bit. It lets me stretch it that way, but it needs to cover both of these. Um, so what you can mess around with is the eccentricity. Oops, and I have it. There we go, W4. You can mess with the eccentricity, and this is going to allow you to kind of shift it left or right. Um, basically, eccentricity is it's telling you if it's at 0, that means the center of the wall is the center of the footing. So you can mess with it. Let's say I want it to shift 3 inches. So that's going to shift it right 3 inches. So I need to shift it a little more. Obviously, you can measure it or you can just play around with it until you hit the correct thing. Um, there's 6 inches. I'm probably going to need maybe a foot of eccentricity. There we go. And now it looks pretty even and it's covered both of them. So that's another trick, right? Just another quick trick of then you can get these guys to align. This is also tricky. I recommend using architecture like reference planes to mark out certain locations so that you can just lock your footings onto certain things. But yeah, that's another trick for kind of these tricky areas, right? Um, Other than that, it's just paying attention to the type of footing, the elevation of it, and yeah, really, it's the type of footing, the elevation. And you guys know how to do slabs on grade. That's just a floor, right? It's going to be just a floor. Actually, let's make it structural because I'm pretty sure you can do that. Next. Structure, you can go to slab. And then you just make your type of slab and you just draw it on like a floor. And yeah, other than that, that's really the bulk of it, guys. It's knowing how to read the drawings and just kind of knowing the little tricks of cutting the walls to get those elevations, those footing steps, um, getting things to combine nicely on Revit, you know. Um, it's okay if your walls are all cut up. It will be, as long as it's seamless, it'll be okay. And another thing for the location of these walls, we allow you to just measure on Revit for like all the location of these interior walls because sometimes they don't line up exactly with the architectural drawings. So you can just do a quick approximate measure on Bluebeam for those location of these interior walls. Yeah, so sorry for the long video, guys. Um, but that's basically the rundown on foundations, right? And part B, you're going to be doing the lower level. Um, a tiny bit more complicated, but I'll show you any new tricks you need for that. But yeah, so if you need anything else, let us know. We can make another video or we can make an announcement or something like that. If there's anything that you guys would like us to focus on. Um, but yeah, okay. Thank you and good luck with part A, guys.